Today we continue with a tragic case from An Ning City, Yunnan, China. In 2010, there was a shocking incident that from the beginning was indignant with the terrible cruelty of the killer, divided the body and threw it in parts into a lake in the east of An Giang City, Ning, Yunnan Province. Public opinion was extremely angry, but after the pieces of the case gradually became clear, leaving everyone shocked, at this time the Chinese people unanimously campaigned for a campaign to create public opinion. Help these perpetrators reduce their punishment and escape the death penalty. Why is there a strange thing on such a large scale? Please follow the following story to learn the details of the case. This is about 9 a.m. on September 25, 2010. As usual, two sanitation workers are sweeping the road and garbage along the lakeside east of An Ning City, Yunnan Province, after working for a while or two. This sanitation worker discovered in the lake there was a white canvas bag wrapped with a round object the size of a basketball inside. They came to the edge of the lake and looked at the garbage bag bobbing along the ripples of the lake, a few meters from the shore. One worker shook his head and complained, "It's so senseless to throw the body straight into the lake like this." The two men had just begun to pull out tools to hook and pull in a canvas bag. When I picked it up, it felt quite heavy in my hand, but the bag was still quite new and still intact, so I was curious and decided to open it to see what was inside. When the bag was just opened, the cleaning worker panicked and threw the bag forward, causing it to plummet to the ground and roll a few times. After a few minutes, when the soul rose to the clouds, he calmed Tinh and quickly took out his phone to call the police, reporting that they found a human head dumped in the lake. Because this is the central area, very close to the police station. So only 10 minutes later the police arrived at the scene where two trembling sanitation workers sat guarding ahead. The criminal investigation technicians arrived on the scene. They sent a force to spread around the scene, scouring the bushes to check around for other body parts, and a diving team was also sent into the lake to find and recover the victim's body. At this time, the news of finding a human head shook the whole area. The people talked about this story very enthusiastically. This case is so famous that although it happened in An Ning City, after the Kunming City Public Security Department learned of the information, they quickly sent administrative experts and forensic doctors to An Ning City. To strengthen and support the local police, set up an investigative task force. Due to the large surface area of the lake and the deep water, this time is just after the rainy season, the water level rises, making it difficult for the investigation. With a lot of effort the police tried to search for body parts in the lake and surrounding areas but to no avail. The crime scene traces also did not collect anything because this area is full of people jogging and enjoying the fresh air, so now identifying the killer's footprints is impossible because many overlapping footprints, not knowing which one is before which one after the other on the white canvas bag, can't find the killer's fingerprints. Investigation on the perpetrator's side is temporarily deadlocked because there is no trace or basis to identify the evil enemy. As for the victim, besides the head in the canvas bag, the body could not be found, so fingerprints could not be compared. It was impossible to determine the height or special identification features of the victim. If there is a scar or a tattoo, the police can only start the investigation from the small body part collected. Based on the skull obtained, the forensic doctor said that the victim was a man about 30 years old, with a high forehead and thin hair, and died for 3 to 4 days. Before the cause of death was being hit many times in the head, causing a skull fracture, and in the forensic report, it was clearly found that the victim had been injured in the back of his neck before he died, leaving a V-shaped wound that required 5 stitches. The thread has not been removed yet. This is an extremely valuable detail. Because it is quite specific, the wound is not too big and has not been removed. It is usually a new wound in about a week. This investigation team immediately went to hospitals and clinics in the city to find information about patients with head and neck injuries within the past 7 days, and at the same time, the police paid special attention to reviewing the records. Profile in the Public Security Department classified and aggregated all reported information about the fight, the accident causing injury in An Ning City within 10 days. In the process of classifying these injuries, the police paid special attention to the incident that happened at more than 3 a.m. on September 21st at the police station, which is about 4 days before the case was discovered. The person reporting the incident was named Tran Vinh Quang, 29 years old. He called the nearby police station and said that he was injured and needed help. After receiving the victim's call for help, the police arrived at the village provider's location. The news was just reported to check the situation, and they found Tran Vinh Quang sitting in the Yunnan residential area in An. At that time, he had a blood-stained head at the gate number 4 of the residential area, who gave off a strong smell of alcohol even when he opened his mouth to say that the police could also smell the strong smell of alcohol in the face of the opposite person. In a state of mindlessness, Tran Vinh Quang was taken by the police to a nearby hospital to bandage and stitch his wound. After that, because the injury was not too serious, he was taken to the police station to report. But because he was so drunk, he couldn't speak clearly and was very difficult to understand, so the police couldn't make a wall, only knowing that in his drunkenness he grabbed his tongue. Fight. So the police called Tran Minh Quang's family to find out more about the situation. When Tran Minh Quang's sister and wife, Thu Con, received the news, they rushed to the police station to pick him up. Tran Minh Quang's wife said that Quang had a little conflict with his friends and it was no big deal, but now because her husband is injured and too drunk, Thu Con wants to take her husband home. Take care first and wait for her husband to sober up, and then they will go back to the police station to continue making the report. But after that time there was no further information. Tran Vinh Quang never came back, so a person at more than 3 a.m. went fishing with his friends at the lake after being drunk and having a conflict, and then again was beaten and injured by someone and was brought home by the family but did not return to make the report as scheduled. This made the police suspicious, and they later investigated at the hospital where Tran Vinh Quang was bandaged that day to check his records. Hospital records show that Tran Vinh Quang had to have 5 stitches in hospital after he injured the back of his neck, which matches the wound on the front of the head found by 2 cleaning workers. At the lake, the police suspect that the dead person is Tran Vinh Quang, so the members of the task force immediately went to his house to check the situation. When the investigation team arrived at Vinh Quang's house, his wife took. He said her husband has been out since September 21st, but has not seen it yet, and doesn't know where to go. It's obvious that there is a problem here, right guys? September 21st is the day that at 3 a.m. the police found him with a blood-stained head sitting in front of the gate of Yunnan residential area and was immediately picked up by his family. Thu Con said he would come back to report the incident later, but he didn't see him missing that day, but no one reported it even though it had been almost 5 days, not to mention that the victim was still alive. He's injured and has just stitched his nose on his head. At this point, it is clear that there is suspicion. It is very likely that the body found in the canvas bag is indeed Tran Vinh Quang. And then the police searched Tran Minh Quang's house. They found his personal belongings were still at home, and they found some tiny blood stains on the wall of the old room, but this blood stain showed signs of being damaged. Washed. They compared the DNA of his 12-year-old son with the DNA of the body and the blood sample on the wall. The results completely matched the father and son's bloodline. When the police came here, the police determined that this bedroom was the first murder scene and his wife became the main suspect. Thu Con was immediately taken to interrogation. Neighbors also added that the relationship between the couple Tran Vinh Quang was not good because Quang often cursed and beat his wife. Maybe too frustrated or in self-defense, this poor wife killed her husband. After being arrested first, the evidence is very clear that the police raised questions about Thu Con's accomplice because it is very difficult if a small woman like her can kill and dispose of the body alone without with someone else's help. After a day and night of interrogation, Thu Con's defensive mentality has collapsed. She made a shocking confession that was not only the murder of Quang, but also his father and sister. The 3 of us, and she hired 6,000 yuan to hire Pho Vinh Hoa as her sister's boyfriend. Who directly took action was her father-in-law. Me and Mr. Hoa. Unexpectedly, the killer who directed the murder turned out to be the victim's biological father, sister, and wife. What's going on? If there is a conflict between husband and wife killing each other, there have been many cases like this before, but in this case, the biological father, the sister, and the victim's wife were involved in this murder, so there are conflicts and enemies. What kind of hatred makes people have to step on blood and blood? Tin Tom causes such a terrible thing. Hearing Tukan's confession, even the most experienced policeman felt shocked. On September 26, the police arrested Quang's sister, Tran Vinh Hoi. That night, Quang's father, 55-year-old Tran Cat Quy, surrendered, and Tran Vinh Hoi was arrested the next day. Since then, the dark nightmare that has covered this family is gradually clarified through the tearful testimonies of the members involved in the case. When the body part was the head in the lake, the Chinese people were boiling in anger at the cruelty of the killer, but when the killer was caught, from the testimony of neighbors who knew the family, the murderer's family, the people across the country and especially the people of Yanshuyan village have agreed to reduce the punishment for this murder family. So what is the origin of this tragic story? Yes, it is strange that we all hear about the past heartache of these murderers. Why did they act so cruelly? Mr. Tran Cat Quy is from Yanshuyan village, Security Yunnan Province. When mentioning this 55-year-old man, many people in Yanshuyan village sigh and say he is a good person. In the eyes of people in this area, Tran Cat Quy is a typical good man and especially very gentle. Almost no one has ever seen him angry with others. Worked hard all his life but was never at peace with his son Tran Vinh Quang. Neighbors also liken that this villain is like a creditor of his Truyen keep and he came to this world only to make Mr. Quy pay his debt. Mr. Tran Cat Quy has a successful career and a family. Happiness. During the first half of his life he established himself and opened a small hotel, married a gentle wife and did not have to worry about economic life, living quite fully. After getting married, Mr. Quy and his wife had 2 children, both girls, and he and his wife were looking forward to having a son to inherit. Finally, they also gave birth to their youngest son, a man who lived nearby. Half of this person's life feels extremely fulfilled. He cherished his youngest son like a pearl and tried his best to satisfy almost anything that Tran Minh Quang wanted. But what he didn't expect was that his pampering was slowly raising a terrible monster that would put his whole family on a path of misery later on. As his son gradually grew up, becoming more and more unruly, Mr. Quy also realized that something was wrong, but he still hoped that when his son grew up a little more, he would be more aware and know what to do. Behaves and thinks, but contrary to the wishes of Tran Vinh Quang's parents, there is no bad habit that he does not have. He dropped out of school, but he also didn't want to work all day, drinking, gambling. Mr. Quy didn't know how many times he had to pay his son's debt when he lost. At this time, Tran Vinh Quang met Tu Con, a girl 2 years older than Strength. Not long after living together, Tu Con became pregnant. Seeing his son playing in debt, Mr. Quy also gave up advice not to think about it again. If a son gets married, he may be more mature to take care of his wife and children, so he is also happy. Mr. Quy and his wife loved their daughter-in-law very much. Knowing that she had lost her parents at a young age, she was especially interested in taking care of Tu Con. After Tran Vinh Quang had a family of his own, he still did not know how to take care of his wife and children, always showing his temper and violence. Not only that, there were many times he beat up Tu Con. The times he lost money, Tu Con did not have money to give him. He also abused his baby son from the time the child was only a few months old to pressure her to manage the money he needs. Tu Con extremely indignant but had to endure because besides her current family, she also had no other support. Every day he went out to play. When he ran out of money, he asked his father. Every few days a gangster came to his house to ask for money. Not wanting his family to be bothered by debt collectors and to save face, Mr. Quy accepted to pay the debt for his son. Later, because he was too disappointed to be able to advise his son, Mr. Quy decided to ignore this naughty child. Do not give money and pay debts instead. Since then, Quang has repeatedly pursued his father with a knife to ask for money and threatened to kill anyone who interferes, so the neighbors can only stand and watch. The culmination of this incident was one time Quang chased and beat Mr. Quy, causing Mr. Quy to fall and break a rib, and Quang's sister also came to the house with a knife to ask for money because he thought that his parents had cheated on his sister, so there was no money left to pay. Owed him. Quang also used to hit his sister by the hair many times when he was not satisfied. The family had to call the police a few times, but Tran Vinh Quang was only detained for a few days at most, and then released. In 2007, Mr. Qui sold a hotel in Yan Shuyan village in his hometown, took his family to An Ning City to open a small hotel for business, and hoped that his son would leave the place with many toxic friendships to do it again. Life hoped that in the bustling city caught up in the work cycle, Quang will no longer play around. However, again contrary to his father's wishes, Tran Minh Quang was still not kinder. He also had an affair with many women, blatantly bringing his lover home in front of his wife. Unable to endure both physical and mental torture, Tu Con wanted a divorce. But Quang did not agree. At this time, Mr. Qui's family was also heavily persecuted by the gangsters because his son gambled and lost a huge amount of money. G help him pay his debt. At this time, in order to save his son's marriage when his daughter-in-law was too depressed to want a divorce, and wanted to give his son a chance to amend, Mr. Qui had to sell the hotel to pay for his son's debt. After all assets were dissipated by Quang, from his position as the boss, Mr. Qui now has to work as a security guard for the construction site to earn extra income while his long-shouldered son is still playing around. Lose. But here comes another conspicuous thing that no one can imagine happened. Really only demons can do that, but it can't be human without it. I don't know where this devil got information about getting compensation for death while working at the construction site, so Tran Vinh Quang thought of poisoning his father to get money. Compensation from the site owner. He secretly put poison in his father's food and drink a few times, but all of them were discovered by Mr. Qui to have a strange smell. Since then, Mr. Qui completely lost hope in Quang. He said if it wasn't dead, it was me. It's okay for me to die, I'm just sorry for his daughter-in-law. I really don't understand how this villain can be so cruel and ignorant, because it's deadly. Is it possible to get compensated if you just bring it up? No, he couldn't think of anything, or his mind was troubled that he had such a crazy plan. Later the police also investigated this to be true, through the fact that he ordered poison and a small amount of unused medicine was hidden in his drawer. After the Great Rebellion and immoral things that Quang did, Mr. Qui deeply regretted that he was born and spoiled his son, and he also told everyone that without this bastard, my family would not as miserable as now. After unsuccessful attempts to kill Tran Vinh Quang's father and the mental torture he caused to other family members, at the end of August 2010 Mr. Qui called to Tran Vinh Hoi and Tu Con, after discussing the three together, decided to spend 6,000 yuan asking Hoi's boyfriend Pho Vinh Hoa to kill Quang, ending suffering for the whole family. On the evening of September 20th, Vinh Hoa street lured Quang to drink alcohol. Then Hoa invited Quang to go fishing at night in the reservoir with the aim of killing. At this time, while Quang did not notice Pho Vinh Hoa used a hammer to cause the crime, but because when drinking with Quang, Hoa was also slightly enameled, so he only managed to hit 2 hits, one on the head and one on the back of Tran Vinh Quang's neck. Was in a drunken stupor, but was beaten so badly that he was a little alert, aware of the danger. He staggered and ran. After arriving at the gate of Lin Hien apartment building, she sat for a while in tin and became more awake, so she called the police. After being brought back from the police station, Quang seemed to find out that his attack was related to his family members. He threatened the matter would definitely be clarified. If it is done by one of you, I will kill the whole family. Knowing that my son has nothing to do but dare to do it, after a psychological struggle, his gut is like a knife, Mr. Qui decided to take action again. On the morning of September 22nd, when Quang was fast asleep in Tu Con's bed, he opened the door to inform his colleagues, and Mr. Qui and Pho Vinh Hoa stormed in and beat Quang to death with sticks and then began to divide the body parts into 4 bags. On a tricycle, they put more stones in the bag to keep the body parts from floating, then went along the lakeside. They one by one threw the bags into the lake on the night of September 23rd. After the details of the case were clarified, many people made petitions to reduce the sentence for this murder family. At the same time, the villagers who knew the victim in Yan Shuyan village did the work calling for the death penalty not to be applied to criminals in this murder. In the eyes of the people of Yan Shuyan village in Qui's hometown, Some people who believe in spirituality believe that Tran Vinh Quang was reincarnated from his enemies in a previous life, so even if he sacrificed for him, no matter how many people we have, if we have a family that is bankrupt because of this illegitimate son, what he responds to is only hatred that deeply hurts him and his family members. Worried and saddened that this incident could end the life of him and his accomplices with the death penalty in a case in which most people make accusations that the dead have done bad things, bad work, mentally tortured his loved ones, after considering the circumstances of the incident and the fact that Tran Vinh Quang had pressed his loved ones many times into dangerous situations, and look received from many angles of the case and public opinion from the people, the court sentenced the two people who directly acted, Mr. Qui, to 15 years in prison, Pho Vinh Hoa and 13 years. And the two women are sisters Ai Quang and Tu Con did not directly participate in the murder, but assisted in disposing of the body as an accomplice who received a 5-year prison sentence. This is a judgment that received a lot of consensus from the people. Usually the murder cases but also disposing of the body are so horrible the perpetrator will have to receive the death penalty, but this is quite a rare case where all 4 people only receive prison sentences but are considered as one. The trial case was reasonable, agreed and supported by the majority of Chinese people at that time. Yes, friends, this case is shocking because of the level of cruelty, but in reality, it is a case where all conflicts are encapsulated within the family when it is the perpetrator and the victim are family members. What's more heartbreaking than killing your own blood relatives? No, there is nothing more bitter than from the time I wanted a son to inherit to the time I had to kill my own son, having cherished the pearls in my hands since birth, a person that anyone can confirm. He is a good person like Tran Cat Qui, because it is so bad that he has to kill his own son. He worked hard all his life to build up an inheritance like that until it was all dissipated in the hands of this naughty child, and then continued to work hard as a construction site guard to earn a living, maintain a tight life, a person who has been diligent all his life but gave birth to such a spoiled child. Well guys, this case has ended our story for today. Looking forward to your comments. If you like our videos, please click subscribe and stay tuned for the next exciting projects that we will bring to you. Thank you and see you again.